All right, everyone. Good evening and welcome back to Midnight Magic Musings. I am your humble host, Lord Cephas. I'm joined by the Earl of Florida, and tonight we take Midnight Magic Musings on the road as I come from an undisclosed location in the nation's capital. Yes, we're not just in one state, we're crossing state lines. Earl, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. You're crossing state lines. I'm crossing the state of insanity.
You
So
know
thank you.
what? Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face, or at least that's what Mike Tyson said. Not sure how that applies here, but we're going to move on anyway. Well, tonight we're actually recording, very close to midnight, so it's very apropos for the name with which we use, and we're not going to have as much time tonight as we normally would, but there are a few hot topics we want to hit from this past week of entertainment. And the very first one we want to cover is Ant-Man and the Wasp, the Quantumania trailer that dropped during, well, if you were a Georgia Bulldog fan, a wonderful college football playoff national championship game. If you're not a fan of Georgia or were a fan of TCU, well, it's understandable that you didn't make it to halftime to see the actual trailer that was dropped. Earl, did you have a chance to see that trailer?
I saw some of it. I will let you bust in, and then I will give my opinions on some of the things, specifically the big reveal that we got in all his Smurfy glory. But I'll let you take lead on this one.
So, just a couple of random things that stand out to me. Number one, the Ant-Man franchise has been built in a lot of ways on slapstick comedy.
Yep.
This trailer is not slapstick comedy. Now, in the back of my mind, I truly believe that Marvel has placed some slapstick comedy here and there. There's got to be at least a few references to Baskin Robbins because Baskin Robbins always finds out. But I've got to believe there's got to be some of that in there. And the reason I say that is the first two movies had a lot of comedy elements into it. This one does not show any comedy elements in it. And I don't know if changing the methodology or the mythos, if you will, of those characters in the third movie to make it a more serious film. Not sure how that might play with the fan base. That's thought number one. Thought number two, my understanding in this Marvel Phase 5 and 6 is Kang is supposed to be the main bad guy for those phases, similar to what they did with Thanos, right? Through the
Yeah.
first three phases of Marvel. I don't know that we know enough about him to set him up as that. I think Ant-Man has a lot of work to do in that particular aspect. And again, it's a tone issue for me. Is that tone proper to get him set up in the right way? And the other thing I think about, because I love the numbers involved with movies, Ant-Man is not the strongest performing property from Marvel. It's usually 400, 500 million, somewhere in there. They really need more out of it if that's going to be your kickoff movie for Marvel Phase 5, and then I guess presumably Phase 6 is when they'll have the King Dynasty and all of that stuff that they previewed before.
Yeah.
So I really feel like there's a lot of uncertainty as they go into Phase 5 and Phase 6, almost as if they're starting from scratch, even though they're not. They're heroes and heroines that we're familiar with, but we're jumping right into the big bad that's going to dominate the next several movies. And so at a time where Disney's had some struggles with some IPs,
Yeah.
this is going to be interesting to see how it turns out. I hope it's a great movie. I hope I love it. But we're going to see. And those are just some of my initial thoughts. I'm a Paul Rudd guy. I do have an idea of where they'll probably take that character. I'll save that for another time. But from what you've seen and even seen previously with the trailer, what are some of your thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania?
Well, there's a few things I want to hit. One, you mentioned uh, gross for Ant-Man. It's always been in the 400, 450 range. But if you go back to the original, the big boys, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, uh, specifically Thor and Captain America, they were between 350 and 450
Mhm.
the first outing.
Mhm.
So I mean, Ant-Man continues the lineage that Marvel created with lesser known, lesser popular characters that can hit a pretty good bang for their buck. Now, considering the fact that now at this day and age, $450 million for a Marvel comic book movie is a letdown. But if you look at it, it's not really, considering you've got Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, and then you have Ant-Man. He was never really going to compete in the same
Mhm.
vein that they were.
Right.
And along with that vein, you have very serious, Thor, very serious Captain America, and also some heavy moments for Robert Downey Jr. as he portrays, Tony Stark.
Mhm.
With Ant-Man, it's a completely different vein of a different genre. You have it's comedy, it's slapstick comedy, it's a buddy comedy, and and again, it's also an origin story. So
Mhm.
it's a very different creature than the three big boys from the OG version. Now, to go along, continuing along with that, the trailer. In the trailer, you saw a few different variations of Paul Rudd's Ant-Man.
Mhm.
You saw a few different variations, a few duplications of different characters and whatnot, and then you obviously see Majors as King.
Yes.
I think, and so you discussed, with Thanos, we had the tease, and then a little bit more tease, a little bit here, a little bit that. But when did we really ever really get Thanos? I mean, we talk about, oh, he was built up and raised up, and he was a mess. He was stuck into this whole tapestry that Marvel wove. But really, we saw a wink that wasn't even Josh Brolin. It was I believe it was Sidney Poitier's son,
Mhm.
as the original Thanos, and a different color scheme as well. Then we saw, I'll do it myself. But when did we really get any Thanos?
Probably in Guardians, what Guardians 1,
And
as
that
he
was
he was kind of pulling the strings on Ronan.
Yeah, but that was a very light, what, 3 to 4 minutes worth of screen time?
Maybe, but he was in 3 or 4 different movies with and I think part of that, to your point, is the mystery that goes with it.
Yeah.
Kind of builds the increase. This one is jumping right into it, and if you've not watched the Disney Plus series, for example, Loki.
I don't think it's going to matter. And here's my reason why. Watch the trailer and you see, oh, look, here's an Ant-Man, here's a this one, here's a that one, here's a multiples of this one. We see King, and then we see King later on as Smurf King or Avatar King or whatever color, Blue King.
I mean, you said it.
Now, for those who saw Loki, they know that at a certain point it broke and time was undone. All the work he had done was undone. So now there are kings popping up everywhere until one's going to win. The final showdown of the king battles.
Right.
I'm arguing what we see in Ant-Man is also the origin story of King. You're going to see King, who's fighting alongside Paul Rudd's Ant-Man. But then we also see King later on, the Blue King, who is not too happy. So I'm going to argue, and I'm going to say, I think we might see two different sides of King. We might see two different variants of King. You're going to see one who's trying to fix things, but then you're going to be introduced to the big bad, and maybe the good King will explain, this is where we deviated. I chose to do good, no matter the sacrifice to myself. The other one shows, let somebody else take the sacrifice or whatever. But I'm arguing that I think that in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, that we're going to see kind of an in-depth origin story of the villain King versus how we got that with Thanos over 2 Avenger movies. And I think by them trying to up the ante and go all in with that man, that's going to add to the gravitas of the situation that they're going to be experiencing with potentially loss, deaths. We don't know for sure. We just know that it's hinting and promising things that we have yet to see. So I 100% see your point of view, but I think we might be in for a rope a dope. You know, Sucker said
it's possible that, I guess, you know, I want it to be a super success, but I'm just wondering, by jumping straight into it, how that's going to affect it, because I don't think Guardians is going to touch on that. I think it's simply going to be, and you know how I feel, if it goes the way I think it will, I will riot and you will, yes, you'll have to come and get me. I don't see that playing into it. The Marvels, I don't really see it playing into it. And so if you skip it in a couple of movies and come back to it, I feel like Marvel has trained us to think a certain way, whether it's good or not. This is this is the way. No, I'm sorry, that's it. That's in March. Marvel's trained us to think it's all connected, and I think in phase 5, phase 6. I don't know that everything's going to be interconnected as much as we saw in phases 2 and 3. Obviously, phase 1, it was quasi connected with Samuel L. Jackson playing the part of Nick Fury. That was really the connective tissue through that.
Yeah.
And as they progressed, you saw more of that interconnectivity. So it's going to be interesting to see how Marvel manages the expectations of the fan base, who still have it ringing in their ears. It's all connected, even though Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was not connected. It's another timeline on another Earth. Whatever that actually was, that I still can't fully understand. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Again, I don't come up from a negative perspective, but I do have questions, because one thing phase 4 did is, in some instances, it kind of limped a little in some places, because I felt like once you hit Endgame and Infinity War, or flip that rather, it didn't feel like they had a plan going forward. And it's hard when you've had a course set for what, 9, 10, that many years, where we're leading up to this, and then all of a sudden it's over. Spider-Man Far From Home picks up the mantle of what the loss feels like.
But
and
I also
that's
think,
kind of it.
Well, I think phase 4, like you pointed out, everything's interconnected now. But I think phase 4, it may have been done unintentionally. But what phase 4 has done was, the end of everything with the Avenger Endgame and Infinity Wars. It shoved everything together. It was all one big price. Everything. It was all or nothing. But then you have Spider-Man, which was awesome, by the way. But Spider-Man pulled back and retreated to where Spider-Man is now solitary again.
Now he is, based on the events of No Way Home.
Then you have Doctor Strange with his events. He's now he's no longer the one in charge. You got Wong doing that, but he's got other aspects that he's having to worry about now. So he's not focusing so much on just his Earth little fights. His is more of a the multiversal realm he's trying to fight with. And so I think I think it was unintentional. If it was intentional, the props to them. But I think that all the different, with Moon Knight and Miss Marvel and all of them, they withdrew from the overall big picture, and it became smaller stakes, smaller heroes, smaller, more personal. And I initially thought that's because they wanted to cut back some of those prices. They're spending too much on actors, spending too much on special effects. But maybe they're trying to rein it in a little bit, so that now, we're going to care about Daredevil and his little corner in Hell's Kitchen. We're going to care about Tatiana with the potential She-Hulk. I said potentially, but I mean, I think maybe it was.
I'm just helping you out there. Go ahead.
So, I mean, maybe that was their plan all along, or maybe I think that's just an unintentional side effect of it, which I think will probably be in their favor. Now, going back to Ant-Man, here's an interesting tidbit. 5 weeks away from release, they're still filming.
Yeah, they're doing some additional reshoots and stuff. Yeah.
That makes a lot of people going, oh my gosh, what's going on? I can get on that bandwagon, but I'm like, you know what? maybe they have a few things they're reshooting because they're like, this didn't work. We want more of this. We need more sacrifice. We need less sacrifice. We need a little bit of levity. Or we're going to film 5 different endings and nobody's going to know anything because we do know that leaks happen.
Well, and they do test audiences, and every big movie does this to see how it plays. Remember Independence Day? The big one was Randy Quaid, right? In the jet. Originally, he was in his crop duster, and that did not play well with audiences. That's why they placed him in one of the fighter jets. It just did not make sense. A crop duster being sucked up into one of the motherships. And so it's not unusual. We'll just see what the finished product actually looks like, and I guess kind of take our cues from there.
I'm going on record.
Okay.
I'm going to say 750 to 850. I'm saying I'm saying they're not. I don't think they're going to hit $1 billion.
No.
But I think they're going to put up, respectable numbers for a Captain America or Thor or Iron Man. I think they're going to hit between 750 and 850, and I'm going on record saying it. They might make more, but I think in 750 to 850, I think is a fair. And some people may call me crazy. It wouldn't be the first time, but I think, I think this might be the. I mean, in all honesty, if you think about it, this is Quantumania. This is King.
Mm-hmm.
If this flops, what are they going to? They're going to be like, "Oh, our house is on fire. What do we do?"
Well, Well, so I'm not allowed to gamble, according to Lady Cephas. But if I were, and this is just between us two, I would say I'm going to take the under on it, not because I want it to take the under, but we got to have some discussion here somehow.
If it's 745, I'm not counting that. I'm going to kick you. Okay?
I'm gonna so give me 7 or under, or 725 and under. Just for to play the devil's just play devil's advocate on that.
We'll bet a pizza on it, sir.
I like that. The other thing that I always bring up, and I know it's frustrating, is it is inflation adjusted.
Yes.
So they may make 900 million, but in reality, because of inflation, it's not as many tickets sold as were necessarily previously, and that's one of the situations that Hollywood is dealing with. Is these numbers look good, but for example, Black Panther 2, half the audience saw the first one, but the ticket prices helped bolster that. Same thing with Avatar. Good on them. They're going to hit $2 billion. Wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful. I'm happy. Make more content. I want content.
Yeah.
But
they're already made it, so.
Right. They've already made 3 and they're going to shoot 4 and 5. It'll happen. But
they've already got 3 and 4.
but in reality, the numbers are huge, but there's an asterisk there. It's like what they used to do with Roger Maris, who hit the 61 home runs or 60 home runs in 60, but he didn't play, or he played more games, so therefore he had an asterisk. I think there's an asterisk with some of these gaudy numbers. As we know, the full money does not get returned to the studios.
Look at Avatar. Avatar reclaimed its spot, right?
Yes, they released it enough times.
How many times was that movie released in theaters? Like 5 times?
Well, the interesting part is the last time they released it, it didn't do anything, which gave a lot of people concern, saying, "Oh, there's no market for it." And then the movie came out, and we see absolutely.
Why it didn't do well the 5th time? Because we went and saw it the first time. We went and saw it 3 times the first time. We went and saw it the second time because it was 3D. We went and saw it third time because of IMAX. We own it on DVD, digital, Blu-ray. I'm like,
you know what? I can click over and stream it on my phone if I want to.
Exactly.
Whatever. But there was a small sect of people who thought, "Oh, that is a harbinger," dare I say, that it's not going to do well. And yeah, right. And in fact, it has done very well and will continue to do well. And to be honest, Disney needs about 3 or 4 more.
Well, they got 2 of them already filled.
Well, no, I mean, they need 3 or 4 more Avatar type releases. Ant-Man's not going to be that. I'm not asking it to be that. To me, it's the Shazam of the Marvel universe. Shazam, I feel like, got held up unfairly because it didn't make 750 million it's Shazam. It's not, the mythos is not built to have that kind of broad appeal, and yet I thought it was a wonderful movie. I love Zachary Levi.
Oh
And
yeah.
but DC purposely held it back because it didn't make as much money. So there's still that numbers game that they're dealing with. And so we're just gonna see how it plays out. What'd you say, 5 weeks away? Is that the number that is about 5 weeks away?
But again, we keep talking about it. Ant-Man genre, it's action, adventure, comedy, a little bit of romance. It's the buddy cop. It's built on that. But this third one, people are going to go. They're going to expect some of that, without a
Yeah.
doubt. And some of the people who are going to go see are big fans of the first one and second one.
Mhm.
That's built in. They're going to go. You got fans who are Paul Rudd are going to show up. You got fans of Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer who are going to
Yep.
show up. You got all these people who are going to show up because of the first two. However, just from the trailers, you see things are ramping up, and now I think that they might be able to pull in more. That's what I'm saying. I'm thinking 750 to 850. I think they're going to be able to hit those numbers because we already know Ant-Man can hit $500 million as an Ant-Man.
Yeah, I think so.
Now throw in King, throw in it's the third, it's the bookend of the trilogy. Throw in the fact that this might be the last time we see Paul Rudd shoot up. This might be the last time we see Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer or Evangeline Lilly shoot up as a Wasp. Now, are we going to lose all of them? No, I don't think so. But you know what? It's possible. We're going to lose somebody. So it's I think between their built-in fan base and with it's the first cornerstone of the King Dynasty. I think that they're going to pull in those numbers, and I went on record. So you can slap me when I failed miserably, or when I underestimated the pull. Because guess what? If that film is an awesome movie, people are going to want to go see it. Can you imagine going, dude? You love Ant-Man? Go see it. It is awesome. It's going to blow your mind. The storyline, the heartstrings, the special effects, and the villain. Marvel has an issue with their villains sometimes not being able to give enough legitimacy to the characters. And you know what? You have a certain time limit. You got to build the heroes. I understand that, but that's one of the reasons I like Black Panther. And I know some people hated Black Panther, but you know what? I was one of the ones that I really, really enjoyed it. Part of it was I loved Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger. I mean, I love the character. I could understand where he came from. I could understand. I could see, this kid.
Oakland.
But seriously, this kid saw his dad murdered by his own uncle. And then he was abandoned for how long? And it just built from there. He was trying to become better, become worthy, and become something. And you can understand, even if you're like, no, he's the bad guy, you can still see certain aspects of it. And there have been a few villains in the Marvel universe you can get behind like that. But I'm thinking this might be King. This might be a return or a new entry to potentially a great villain. So
well,
maybe.
Let me throw in one thing here on the Black Panther, and I've got one more thing on the King. Props to Angela Bassett for winning her Golden Globe Award, the first major win for any actor or actress in a Marvel film. So congratulations to her taking home the Golden Globe. I know that there is some controversy with the foreign press as to how much prestige it has, but you know what? Go home and take the win. You know what?
Yeah.
Congratulations to me. That lady can do no wrong. Love her as an actress. She is wonderful as T'Challa's mom, hauntingly so in that film. Now, having said that and that lovingness, I have to take another step back. I will say this, and this is just my personal opinion. If they variant up heavily phase 5, I think that's going to push some people away. And the only reason I say that, DC. You have the DC movie universe that can't figure out which world they live in. You have the DC on, well, what was the DC universe on CW that is now transitioning over to HBO Max.
Yep.
Maybe that had so many variants and resets as we go into Flash season 9, which I will watch. I will watch it just as I will watch Arrow season 8 because it's my duty as a fan, and I loved those characters. I did not love every season by any means. I will not die on that hill, but I will die on the hill that I enjoyed the Flash. But back to my point, so many resets, so confusing and convoluted. There's always a risk with time travel and with the variant thing that somewhere in the middle people go, what?
Really?
And
Yeah.
I don't mean that being funny. I'm like, I don't follow it. And then you're in the point where you're in Eternals territory where you have to give a lot of exposition. And little ones like you have or little ones like I have are just going to be like, when did the explosion start? When did they
Oh,
fight?
mine, my little ones, my
Mhm.
7, 8 year old, were like, "Oh, it's fun. They're superheroes." And then it got to the point where they're talking, and they're like, "Is it a bathroom break, snack break? What? Can we skip this part?" And
Right.
I'm like, "I can't."
Otherwise known as Loki season 1. Okay, so I'm sorry, but that joke was burdened with glorious purpose, or so it felt. All right.
You're gonna fire on Loki, and I'm still going. WandaVision? Really? No. Oh.
Now see, that's a show in and of itself. But we'll move on. We'll move on. All right. Next thing we have on our agenda is it looks like Disney is going to be dissolving the Lucasfilm story group that was responsible for, I guess, shepherding or directing Star Wars. So
Yeah.
for you, how big a deal is that they might kind of disband that storyboard and maybe give it to one or two people to shepherd it? Do you think that's better for the IP as a whole? We're coming up on how many years since the last movie? 5 years
I'm
since the
still
last
in
guy?
Legacy. I'm in Legacy Land. I don't know what movie you're talking about.
Well, and that's an interesting point because one of the things that's been said in the last couple of weeks, and I know we're jumping around, but there's a lot to say on this is, well, we don't have material to work for them. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Except you buried it over there. So I don't accept that as an excuse. And the video games we played and loved and that will still come out, and all of those books that you used to read all the time and all that, the
Used to?
money, I'm sorry, that you still read. Broken Ansible, who appears on this channel from time to time, gets the audiobooks, knows far more than I will ever know about that. I mean, he's engaged with it. You have things to pull from.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry, I don't give that excuse much credence. I mean, I'm concerned that Star Wars is slipping as a movie property and inching towards a television property.
Well, see, I think Star Wars. I I think the reason they decided to go the way they went with their sequel trilogy
Mhm.
was the fans already knew what was going to happen. The fans already knew what was going to happen for the next 300 years. I mean, the fans
Right,
that were
right.
buying the books, buying the video games,
Mhm.
buying the clothing, buying the toys, buying the merchandise, just share it. I'm sorry, I'm having a yogurt moment.
Spaceballs the flamethrower.
Exactly.
Anyway.
But I mean, these were the fans that, grew from Timothy Zahn's first book,
Mhm.
grew this 3 movie trilogy that existed in the late 70s and early 80s into this mega franchise that went from TV to cartoon to everything. And so if they did it from, we want to give the fans something new, that they give them surprise, give them that magic, then I can understand that part. But when they fail to deliver that, the hardcore fans mutinied, to put it mildly. I mean,
That's a nice way of saying it. Yeah.
the thing is, if that was where they came from, I can understand it. But the moment they failed to reach the expectation set, they were doomed, because they, in order to make their own sequel trilogy, they had to reset everything that happened from Return of the Jedi onwards.
Mhm.
And when you did that, all the books and games and comics and everything else, as we learned, it became a parallel legacy universe. And so some of those characters that were so near and dear to our hearts, like Thrawn, we're going to be seeing Thrawn again later on, coming up. But I'm like, it's not the same Thrawn we got from Timothy Zahn, because he
Right.
doesn't go through the things that he went through with Timothy Zahn. When we got, we've been waiting for Mara Jade, but we're never really going to get Mara Jade, because if she didn't show up in the sequel trilogy, there's no room. That would be a good reason why Luke was such an old crotchety old man, was because maybe he lost his wife and his kids or whatever.
Well, we're just gonna retcon it where she's in love with Kylo. I'm sorry. Go ahead on.
But I mean, so when you take away what 30 from 91 to 2015, so when you take away
25 years.
25 years of expanded universe,
Yeah.
and create something that was less than the sum of the parts of the 25 years, then there was going to be some, to put it mildly, butthurt. I felt it. It was like, it's like I said, I may understand where they came from, but like there is so much wealth and of information and knowledge that they could have used.
Oh, bless you.
Excuse me. So, I mean, and the character, it baffled me so much.
So, to your point, it's interesting because they've spent a lot of time and a lot of money on other Star Wars related properties. They put together Galaxy's Edge at Disney. Honestly, based on their own numbers and their own information, not been the success they thought it would be. Now, it was said recently that originally Galaxy's Edge was set on Tatooine, but they didn't want that because they didn't want to tie it to the original trilogy.
Yeah.
They felt like, everyone's like, well, we have to look forward, which, I do agree with that. You can't always live in that one framework. But what they found is people our age,
we want that.
We didn't go to that new thing.
Yeah.
Not because I'm mad at them. I did actually eventually go and took my grandchildren with it, and they were kind of like, that's cool. Look, there's Chewbacca. The one person they were excited to see was Chewbacca. And they saw the stormtroopers. They interrogated my kids, and they thought that was really cool, right? Because they're little and they still believe stuff. But people of our age that didn't connect with that trilogy, don't spend the money, and therefore their kids don't get that much. Yeah. And you've got to have a generation behind the generation to keep coming. Otherwise,
listen here, guys. You want Star Wars and Marvel to work? It's called indoctrination. You must raise up a child the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. Am I mixing certain theological things with it? Maybe, but it's still true.
You're right. Well, but what's interesting, and this is a little inside baseball, some behind the scenes stuff, but I have different business ventures. One of them is we work with toys and such. We sell things and whatnot. One of the discussions being held behind closed doors by distributors is there's an attitude, or at least a belief, that Star Wars, and I'll use the term and I'll explain it, is not considered an evergreen property anymore. What an evergreen property means in toys and merchandise, clothing, blankets, all that, it means, does it sell any time of year? All of a sudden, Star Wars is being downgraded by a lot of these manufacturers and merchandisers, like, you know what? It doesn't sell unless there's something big going on. They've even seen sales of Grogu related merchandise not as strong as it hasn't fallen off the cliff, but it's noticeably going downward, to the point that in one of the mock-ups I saw, they're talking about having an item that has Grogu in a mech suit, and I'm just like, oh, calm. It may be the coolest thing in the world, but at a certain point, you've drained everything out of that there is, and so I think going forward, you know,
So
Disney
you're
has.
saying
Go
when
ahead.
Ash throws a Pokeball and says, Grogu, I choose you, you've crossed the line?
Actually, I would watch that just for the sheer entertainment of the train. Yeah, of the train wreck it would be. But there are some challenges there, and I'll say it this way: I don't know if they'll ever get those fans back, as you said, that were really the Legends thing hurt the next trilogy, and for a lot of people, finished it off.
Yeah.
I won't get into the Gina Carano thing because I think that gets overplayed. Um, but I will say right now, the one positive Star Wars has going for it is only the Mandalorian.
I've heard
And
about Andor, and I don't know the numbers because I haven't
uh-huh,
looked at it because I'll be watching the series probably the next few weeks.
right.
I know it was renewed for a second season, which
It
doesn't
was.
necessarily mean anything,
Well,
but
originally they were promised 3 seasons. It was cut back to 2, which
ah,
which is why a lot of people complained in the first season it was so
slow.
slow. Well, you had 3 seasons to tell a story.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you're told, actually it's 2. So about halfway through the season, see things start to speed up a little bit. I mean, that's just my opinion because I don't write the checks. You can't do that to a content producer and change halfway through the first season. Be like, oh, you only get 2 seasons for sure. Well,
Especially if you only have 6 or 8 episodes per season.
and I've heard it described this way, and I'm interested to hear your feedback. Is Andor is Star Wars for grown-ups? And that's fine. But I've also heard people say, but there are no space battles. There are no lightsabers. That is what Star Wars for us was. It was going to all these different worlds and encountering these different aliens. Honestly, Empire Strikes Back, which is probably the best of the three in terms of like cinematography and a story,
Yeah.
had some slow parts.
Yeah.
It was slow on Hoth. There were parts of it that were exciting, but nothing really happens until the Empire attacks.
Hoth? You're meaning Empire Strikes Back. You said Return of the Jedi.
No, I thought I said Empire Strikes Back. But there's some very slow parts in there.
Yeah.
Very slow parts. Luke encountering Yoda, honestly, one of the slowest parts of the movie. It drags on for a while.
Yeah.
Cloud City, Bespin. It drags on for a while till the last 30 minutes of the movie or 20 minutes of the movie, however that's timed out. But you know what? It's still held up as possibly the best one ever of the original trilogy. So you don't have to have battles all the time, but you got to have something to remind me that it's Star Wars. And I don't mean, oh, look, there's a character named something. Oh, well, it's tied together. That's not Star Wars for a lot of people. And I understand they felt they had more time, they could stretch it out. But I'm just saying, you can't always expect people to just swallow it because you slap Star Wars on it or Marvel or
Well,
Dungeons and Dragons, the movie that's coming out here in a couple of months. Because I do want to talk about that as well here tonight before we go. It's a really weird time in entertainment because we're getting content, but I'm wondering if the glut of content is wiping out some of the quality of the
yeah.
content. And
Well,
I'll turn it back to you.
You were talking about Andor being for grown-ups and because it doesn't have the lightsabers and everything. Well, I would argue the Mandalorian
Mhm.
should not have been what it became, season 1, because you didn't have a dude running around with a lightsaber. Did you?
No, but you had a character that was based on stuff known in the universe.
Yeah.
He was Boba Fett light to a lot of people. They saw
Yeah.
the costume. They knew who Boba Fett was, but he's not Boba Fett. He's the
If they knew who
Mandalorian.
Boba Fett was, they knew it wasn't Boba.
They knew the look is what I'm saying.
This is
Well,
not. This is not the way.
this is not the Mandalorian you're looking for. Sorry,
But
continue.
I mean, I can understand where you're coming from. But on the flip side, you already know some of these characters in Andor because of Rogue One. So you where the Mandalorian has Boba Fett from the original trilogy to look forward to, and Jango Fett, who I think he much closer resembles with the armor, just personal opinion. But either way,
I can see that.
it's shinier. Then you have Andor being tied with Rogue One, which was one of the Rogue One solo movies that came out that pushed away from swinging lightsabers and flashy force powers and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
And I admit I watched Rogue One. I thought it was good, but I didn't run out going, "Whoo, I'm glad I added that to my Star Wars fandom." It took place in the Star Wars universe, but for me, just for me, it wasn't Star Wars.
yeah,
It's just not. It's a good story, good characters. It's like Solo. I didn't hate that movie, even though you already had it done, and then you're like, oh, we can't do that. So we bring in Ron Howard to clean it up and make it the way we want it.
yeah,
So many questions I have is how did you let it get that far? You see
yeah.
you see the dailies, they're coming out every day. They're called dailies. How did you not know? And then your excuse is, well, people didn't want, a replacement for Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Whether that's true or not, you can't quantify that.
No.
You just didn't do well. And by the way, the other thing with that is they buried the merch. You
Mm-hmm.
couldn't find Solo merchandise because Marvel had the prime areas, the end caps where people walk by and see, and it pulled. You have little kids, you know what it's like. They're running to touch everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's why they do it. Solo didn't get that treatment. So there were a lot of failures that could have possibly produced not only a good movie, but perhaps more than one.
Yeah.
But we'll never know because of some of the missteps that they had. And hopefully they've learned from those with the further franchises that they're attempting to launch. Legends of the Jedi, or Bad Batch season 2 came out, or in the Ahsoka series, they're going to bring in several characters from Rebels. Everybody has their own opinion on Rebels, but they're going to start introducing some of that in there. I suspect, spoiler alert, kids, feel free to take about a minute out of this and not listen. My expectation is the Ezra Bridger character is going to be introduced in live action just because of the way that Rebels ended. And that's really why, if you remember in the Mandalorian series, Ahsoka wants Thrawn.
Yeah.
She doesn't want Thrawn for any other reason other than she's tracking Ezra. So a lot of people are excited about that, but if you didn't watch Rebels, if
It
you
doesn't
didn't
get it.
see, and that's same challenge Marvel has, but other franchises have it too. Some fans consume everything like you would with the expanded universe. You consume that and you love it. Not everybody will. And so how do you meet them in the middle? All the purists say, well, it's not the way it was in the book.
You know,
Sometimes it's really hard to do that
yeah.
in real life.
I think we might have hit on something. We have a lot of the hardcore fans that are like, okay, we had the original trilogy, we had the prequel trilogy that, aged better than it should have for those who were adults that saw it and disliked it because we were OG trilogy. But then later on, as we got older and time passed, we understood why certain things were done
Yes.
in the prequel trilogy. You know, if Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, if they want to do something to get the fans, to show the fans, okay, guys, we're serious about this. So the final Star Wars film hit, the end of the trilogy. What have we had since then? We've had The Mandalorian, we've had Boba Fett, we've had Andor. We'll throw Solo and we're just talking about it. The other Star Wars movie, Rogue One.
Rogue One, all right. So there's 5 properties right there.
Then you can throw in Rebels and the Bad Batch and all these different ones. And the Ahsoka one that's coming out. What are we missing? What are the fans not being given? And when you hit on it is, we watch Andor, it's a Star Wars property. We watch Mandalorian, it's Star Wars property because it has you know, it resembles Boba Fett or Jango Fett or whatever.
Yep.
You know what? If they want some of the hardcore fans to come back and get serious about it, they need to say, okay, guys, it's time for Star Wars. We have all these other different avenues that, you know, we're reaching out and fleshing out the Star Wars universe with non-Force users and blah 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 blah. But Star Wars ultimately comes down to whether it's a Skywalker story or the Palpatine story. Who cares? The point is, it's a Force user story.
Yeah.
If you want to be serious, give us, as they, you know, tease the Knights of the Old Republic story. Yeah. Or, you know what, jump forward 500 years in the future and write your own story completely free of anything in legacy and expanded universe. Give us Jedi, give us Sith, give us Shadow Jedi, give us Gray Jedi, give us, you know, Rogue Jedi, give us different variations. And there are so many different Force sects that you don't SECT.
Yeah,
I'm clarifying. There's so many different Force organizations. You know, that you have the Baron Sages, you have you know, the Witches of Dathomir, you have all these various different ones that you could be using that still stays with the core lightsabers. You know, give the fans what they want, which is part of the reason we went and saw the movies, the sequel trilogy. We wanted lightsabers, we wanted force powers, we wanted something amazing.
And make no mistake, based on Thrawn, those are not Thrawn, Timothy Zahn, excuse me. See, it was so easy to say. The success of those books, I think, caught everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
But you know what it did? It made a lot of money for Lucasfilm.
Yeah. But you know what?
Well, let me finish. And they did more books too. And you know what that did? That made a lot of money for Lucasfilm. You know what it did? It paved the way for another trilogy. Because that kind of thirst and hunger, people will loan money to theater or to studios to make movies because they're going to get their money back plus interest. I truly believe if those 3 books in the early 90s don't hit, we don't have the prequel trilogy like we don't have it. But Lucasfilm made a lot of money off of this, the expanded universe and the video games and all, and it was very lucrative.
Yeah.
And so I feel like what you're saying is absolutely true. Take it in the future. I don't have to know all these people. In fact, it's better that I don't. But you know the elements that need to be there because you've got, as you said, 25 years of lore. Set aside the first 3 movies. Just set them aside for a second. And set aside that they committed the unpardonable sin in Star Wars by not having at least one scene with Luke, Han, and Leia. I had to say it. It just needed to be done. But set those aside. You can make really good stories. It does not have to be about them. But the elements, it's got to be a world I recognize. I think that's part of the issue. You know, I watched Lord of the Rings for the first time. I know I'm a terrible person. Sat through it all, enjoyed it, and then I watched the Hobbit trilogy. But I could understand and appreciate the Hobbit trilogy because I knew the world they were in because of the other 3 movies.
Yep.
For me as a fan, that's a key. Give me a world I know. You don't have to give it to me shot for shot like they did with episode 7. Just give me the world I know, put characters in it with a good story. And, you know, you don't even have to have great actors. Give me reasonably good actors.
Yep.
And I think you would see more of a positive response. And this is the last thing I'll say because I'm dominating the conversation. I'm sorry. Perception is reality. You know, all we ever hear is about the toxic fan base. Remember the fandom menace, not phantom, fandom. Yeah. Which is kind of funny because there is a subset of that without question. Nothing you ever release is going to be good enough. Yeah. It's going to be dog crap from the beginning. But that's not everybody. But if you look at the fan base with that adversarial position, if I'm Disney, and think everybody's that way, your content's probably not going to be directed to those folks. You're going to direct it somewhere else when that is exactly where you need to direct it. Because friends and such will tell people, like you were talking about Ant-Man, hey, go see the movie. That's one of the challenges they've had in Marvel the last 3 years. All their movies are front loaded. After the first 2 weeks, they've made their money. And it just kind of limps along till it's done. I heard it said today on another channel. there's probably nothing anybody can do. I'm not taking that tack. I believe there's always hope unless you just, put a bullet in its head. There's still hope, but you got to
You
meet
went during the part. There's life.
you,
Life
you,
will find a way.
you got to meet somewhere in the middle. You have to, because you know what? We never thought we'd get Star Wars again.
Oh no, yeah.
Even after the prequel movies, I didn't think there would be another 3 movies. But here we are. So where do we go from here? I think that's the real challenge that Disney has. Okay. Next thing I want to turn to. Did you ever watch the Dungeons and Dragons trailer for the movie?
Okay. I saw the trailer, okay?
Okay.
More importantly, I saw the previous 2 movies. So I have no faith in Dungeons and Dragons. The trailer looks funny. It looks action packed. It looks like it would be right up my alley. However, I'm still scarred from okay, let me preface this by I never played the board games. I never did any of those things. I like a good fantasy movie. I saw the first movie with a few friends of mine who proceeded to either A, cry during the movie because they're ruining my childhood, or B, they wanted to fight people in the theater who were enjoying the movie, and I'm in the middle going, can I go to the bathroom and go to the car? I'm scared. I'm fearful of my life. But so I mean, the first 2, I was like, no, Lord, okay, and I saw them both with people who love the Dungeons and Dragons were a very important part of their childhood and adulthood. But for me, I have no attachment to it. I hope it does well. I hope almost every movie comes out does well. And I've seen the trailer. I like Chris Pine. I'm not a massive fan of his, just because I do like him. They also have Michelle Rodriguez and Justice Smith, and Hugh Grant is the antagonist, which is either going to be odd or
it could be brilliant casting. We just don't know it yet.
Odd or amazing. It could be either or. But as a fan of the genre, not the product, not of Dungeons and Dragons, I hope it does well. I like we discuss all the time, we want these things to do well because we want to see more of them. I never watched the World of Warcraft. I never played any of the World of Warcraft stuff, but I saw the movie. I enjoyed it. I know half the people would want to kill me for saying that. The other half want to, bring me into their clan, and I'm not entirely sure what that means, and I'm not sure I want to. But I'm like, I enjoyed it. I wanted it to do well, and so in the same vein, I hope this one does well. I like the genre, so over to you, Lord Cephas.
Well, that actually you did a really nice job of taking where I wanted to go, and that is, where do some of these movies that are coming out that are based on popular IPs, where do they go from here? For example, you got Super Mario Brothers coming out in April, I believe. I truly believe it's going to be a massive hit. I think the gamers are going to go watch it. The kids are going to go watch it. I happen to know my youngest got a Super Mario Brothers toy from McDonald's the other day, and her happy meal was like a super happy meal when she saw it was a Princess Peach. Over the moon, knew who it was, and I'm just like, okay, I'm raising somebody right. There's some hope here. I think that's going to be a massive hit. So I think that franchise. Look, unless they screw it up, is going to be helpful. By the way, on their way to collecting their check and big money, they should high five Sonic on the way.
Yeah.
For really paving that way. You hear rumors coming out that the Legend of Zelda movie is further into pre-production than people even thought. I don't know that we're going to get a Nintendo cinematic universe, but I will say this. You heard it here first. I need an in-game like scenario where you have all these characters coming out of the portals. I need Luigi and Princess Peach and Toad and Yoshi. Heck, give me Wario if you can. Give me the frog from Super Mario Brothers 2. That still, you have to go watch the YouTube video to understand why he fought a frog at the end of Super Mario Brothers 2. I need those characters coming out. And you know what? I need some more Nintendo folk too. I need Zelda. I need Link. I need I need Mega Man coming out of there. Think about all the Metroid. Think about all the things you could do in a Nintendo Cinematic Universe. I'm just throwing it out there. I know I'm out here alone on the edge, but I just wanted to see. Wow, that hurts. Just want to see what you thought about that, a possible Nintendo Cinematic Universe, especially with them opening up a Nintendo World at Universal Studios down in Orlando, which when they open up the Mario Kart, if you thought getting onto the Guardians ride at Epcot was hard,
Yeah.
you just wait till that happens and it'll be backed up for weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. That's one of the things I'm really looking forward to. I think the fan base is going to be united on that one. I
I
really,
think,
really do.
all right. On the one hand, that would be really cool.
Mhm.
However, Sonic isn't a Nintendo IP, so you'll never see the rings open up for Mario. And to bust that bubble for you, I just stole some of your happiness. That gives me a certain amount of joy. Let's continue. Okay.
Fine. You are a moon-faced assassin of joy. That's what you are.
But moving on, I would love for Mario Brothers. I think it'll do well. I think it will. But I'm worried that they will fall into the same category of routine that like the MonsterVerse did. Oh, we're gonna make this huge interconnected universe, and it didn't quite meet expectations.
They made 2 movies. There's no universe.
Well, I mean, technically, they had the Wolfman with Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins was supposed to be part of it. So was Dracula Untold with Luke Evans and Dominic West. And so when they came out with The Mummy, that was actually with Tom Cruise. That was actually
Right.
another one of the monster movies. Obviously you had Godzilla and they had all these different other IPs that they were willing to throw into production. And when The Mummy failed to hit what they wanted or expected, it threw the whole thing out of whack. And I love the idea behind all these interconnected IPs that exist in the same universe. But when one of them flounders, it makes them gun shy, it makes them afraid to pull the trigger on something that that was given the green light, and now they're like, oh, that one didn't work out. So now we don't know if we want to do all these other ones. And so the problem with the interconnected universe is when one fails, it affects all of them. Some of them get canceled, some of them get reshuffled, some of them get pared down. Well, we don't want to spend too much money because this one flopped, so let's save as much money as possible. So I do love the idea and when it works of an interconnected universe, but the problem is it's a business and they look at the money aspect and go, it didn't hit what we wanted, so now we're going to start cutting the fat on everything and maybe even cancel a few things.
You mean like AMC did this week, canceling 3 shows that were already in the can. They just like, no, we're not even going to show them on TV. We're putting
I don't understand these networks that are doing that. HBO, AMC, CW talking about doing it to 2 of theirs that already filmed, but they're like, well, we're going to shop it around and see if somebody wants to pick it up. And I'm like,
in CW's defense, no one watches CW. So I mean, I too soon. The sort of
on you, sir.
The sort of Zaslav falls on everyone, sir. Speaking of AMC, as we're getting ready to wind down here, news came out this week of the Maggie and Negan spinoff show, The Dead City. We got a little bit about the Daryl Dixon series. They had some still shots over in France. They were kind of cool.
Supposedly, his character washes up on the shore in France. He wakes up that way.
Maybe he finally went to get a shower and it overwhelmed him. I don't know what that was. We got news that season 8 of Fear the Walking Dead will be the last.
And a big time jump, supposedly, as well. I just saw that where they said
they can't jump far enough in time. We'll have to do a show on my thoughts on the Walking Dead universe one day. And then the last one, I think, is probably the most interesting.
There is not another one.
No, there is one more. That's the Rick and Michonne series.
No, I'm pretty sure it will never happen.
It's been pushed back to 2024, according to sources this week.
And sources are also saying that there's going to be some animosity and fighting between the two characters who can't come to understand the other's point of view. After 8 years, I don't care anymore.
Well, the thing that I think that kind of concerns me is it's called It's a Romantic Story. How can it be romantic if you're split apart?
No. They both fall in love with somebody else.
Will you stop that? Judith and RJ need their mother and father. I think we can agree on.
Don't.
I'm pretty sure we can agree that a fully functional family is the best kind of family.
You said fully functional family. I don't agree that Rick and Michonne deserve the right to be parents after abandoning their children. No. Michonne.
Rick didn't abandon the children. He just got blown up.
Yeah, he was forcefully removed unwillingly.
Correct.
Michonne decided to leave and then continued to leave over and over and over. And I don't.
Michonne went to some island to take mushrooms and have psychedelic trips, and then she decides to leave. So you have to question her motives and her mental state during that time. That was her visit to the island with Virgil in that one particular series.
She's a katana-wielding, zombie leading by leash and collar woman in the zombie apocalypse. I'm not questioning her sanity at all.
I think it's brilliant.
At least not to her face.
And that blade's pretty long. You don't have to say it to her face. Just take about 10 feet back just to make sure she can't swing that thing and get you. But that's interesting. Yet again, it's pushed back another year. Remember, the whole point of the series was because they couldn't get movies done. Now, part of that was COVID related, but I think part of it is they were a little premature in their announcement. We're going to do a movie trilogy. Well, unless you're going to do them 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, they're going to be 2 years apart or 3 years apart, and all of a sudden you're talking about 9 to 10 years to complete a story. And if you were a Walking Dead fan and just did 11 seasons over 10 years, you're talking about you've got to watch that franchise for 20 years to get the ultimate payoff. Think about how many IPs make it 20 years. On television, the first one to ever do it was Gunsmoke, and that was revolutionary at the time. We've seen Law and Order SVU in like its 25th season. Law and Order was renewed. It's now in like its 22nd season. NCIS will be coming back for a 20th season. I believe they're in season 19 now. So it's a little more pronounced where people stay with franchises for that period of time. But even with that, costs rise. Actors and actresses are expensive. CGI is expensive. You see a lot of these shows get cut. Yep. I'm not sure if you're not going to see a little bit more than Netflix policy, which is you get 3 years. And if you're not making us a profit, you're done. I'm wondering if you're going to see more of that with at least on the TV side and the cable side, because there are very few Tulsa Kings, very few Yellowstones. By the way, shout out to Kevin Costner, who won Best Dramatic Actor at the Golden Globes for his portrayal of Mr. Dutton. And yes, he is Mr. Dutton. I do not call him by his first name. For his portrayal on Yellowstone. So congratulations to him. I personally feel that was well-deserved. I am a big Yellowstone fan, 1883, 1923. Really, really good franchises there. Taylor Sheridan right now is the man, but he's starting to Dick Wolf it up. Dick Wolf does all the Law and Orders. He does the 3 Chicago series. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he does the FBI series as well. For CBS.
Do a little known show, Highlander the Raven.
I'm not going to go into anything about Highlander the Raven tonight, which is now this morning.
What's the name on that too?
I don't know that he was actually on Highlander the one season, dare I say, of Highlander the Raven. Is apparently Amanda did not pull in the viewers necessary to necessitate a season number 2. All right. Well, anything else you want to talk about on this week's episode before we call it quits for the night?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure we hit all the main aspects. So we wanted to. We talked about Avatar. We talked about Ant-Man. We talked about the 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 sustainability of certain IP addresses, and then we also talked about the upcoming Dungeons and Dragons. So I think uh, I think we did pretty well this time. Um, we are curious to know if any of you have any thoughts on Ant-Man that we didn't cover.
Mhm.
Is any predictions? Do you want to go to the less than stellar under 725 with Lord Cephas, or are you willing to climb on that boat with me and say, we will volunteer a pizza to the winner because we're going to win? Do you have faith in Ant-Man? Why? And what are your thoughts about this new outing into the Dungeons and Dragons universe? Are there any fans out there who want to give us any tidbits of information that we have no idea we need or don't need? And lastly, I think that's it, actually.
Yeah, the Earl does not frequent comic book stores or game shops to play Dungeons and Dragons. I am slowly learning my way through Magic the Gathering. And by slowly means I get my butt kicked, but we're getting there. We will not be wading into the Wizards of the Coast controversy. Google it. We're not going to cover that here. But we've had a lot that we've covered tonight. Earl, I want to thank you for recording very late with me and taking time out of your busy schedule.
Officially
Next week we'll be back, same bat time, same bat channel. We're going to have more topics next week. One of the ones I want you to think about, Earl, is iconic television music theme songs. What are some of your favorites? We want to talk about that next week in amongst some other things. That'll be our special topic.
Are we doing a top 10 or a top 5?
You know what? Let's do 5, just so it doesn't take up the whole show. It can be any decade, any genre, doesn't matter. I want to know what you liked.
Now, are we talking cartoon and anime as well? Or are we talking live action specifically?
For next week, let's do live action specifically. We will have some anime dedicated shows, some cartoon related shows and things as we go forward. We definitely want to cover that as well. All right, everyone. I want to thank you for listening this week. Go ahead and click that like button. Go ahead and click subscribe. Leave us some comments. We definitely want to interact with you. It absolutely does help us with the YouTube algorithm. But even above that, we enjoy the interaction, not just with each other, but with you as well. We want to thank you for taking the time to listen to us. Yes, that's right. If you can't see it on here, if you're just listening to the audio version, the Earl is giving you the heart sign. Apparently, he loves you, and you apparently complete us. So for the Earl of Florida, I am your humble host, your humble servant, Lord Cephas. We want to thank you for joining us this week. We will see you next week on Midnight Magic Musings. Good night, everybody.
Love ya.